What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 24 preview, and there is a lot to discuss. Plenty of questions around the double game week, such as triple captain, assistant manager, is it worth taking hits, and more. Plus, we're going to talk about double Bournemouth midfield and whether it's worth selling Bruno Fernandes. So let's get into it. So first question, would you take a hit to bring in any Liverpool or Everton players? I think with Everton in particular, I'd be very cautious about doing it. When I look at the fixture run, it's not bad. Like, the double is 2 home games. You get to play Leicester. Obviously, Liverpool's a lot more difficult. Then Palace, Man United, Brentford, Wolves is okay. But 3 of those games are away from home. They do play in 29, which is going to be a blank for some teams. That's against West Ham at home. So overall, 24 to 29 doesn't look that bad. But I don't think after the double, you're going to be concerned about not having Everton players. So the idea of doing like Chris Wood to Ndiaye or João Pedro to Ndiaye or something like that, or a defender to Mykolenko for a -4, it just doesn't really sit right with me. Like, I think they're going to be okay options after the double, but not really worth a hit. Usual caveats apply. If you're doing Chris Wood to Ndiaye and that's going to give you the money to take a hit to get Trent in, then fair enough. Maybe I would do it. But generally, given a broad answer, I'd avoid hits for Everton players. For Liverpool, I would want to be tripled up. I know it's 2 away games, and so potentially the upside is not necessarily there, but we're talking about the best team in the league this season. I can't see any reason not to be tripled up, even if that's going to take a hit. So Bournemouth away, Everton away. Then you get that Wolves at home game in 25, which is good as well. City away, not quite so good, but then it's home games against Newcastle and Southampton. So not only do you take a hit for a player with 2 games in the best team in the league, you then get 3 home games in the next 4 after that. Wolves, Newcastle, Southampton. And although it's quite likely that Liverpool will blank in 29, I think they're well worth just tripling up on. So Everton, not so much. Liverpool, I probably would. So if money is available for both, would you go for Wissa or Ndiaye? Now, this is a hard question for me to answer because I like going all in on double game week. So the idea of picking the single game week player doesn't sit right. That being said, from game week 25 onwards, I know which of these 2 players I would want in my team, and it's not the Everton forward. With Calvert-Lewin injured, and we're expecting him out for a few weeks, although that hasn't been confirmed yet, Ndiaye is on penalties. And at 5.5, there's a bit of a saving there that might come in useful later on. But let's be real, Wissa is the better pick from 25 onwards. And if I was free hitting in 24, I would absolutely pick Ndiaye over Wissa. But there's not a guarantee that he will outscore him, because obviously the extra fixture is against Liverpool. And Brentford literally have Spurs at home, which looks pretty good. Now, Davern is back in training for Spurs, so maybe he'll be available for that match. That might improve their defence. But Brentford are going to get a lot of chances. Then you got West Ham away, Leicester away, Everton at home, Villa at home, Bournemouth away. I'd just much rather have Wissa for that run. And actually, I did a quick search on Twitter for him before I recorded this section. And I saw this tweet from Ted Knutson saying Erling Haaland has the highest XG per 90 in the Premier League this season. Number 2 is Wissa. Like, he's had so many chances, and that's going to continue to happen. So I think looking for a pick from 24 to 29, it's got to be Wissa. I think overall you will score more points. For 24 specifically, I'd still pick the double game week player, especially when he's on penalties. I think it's got to be Wissa. I wish I had more money for my own team. So how much does the long gap between the first and second game of the double game week impact selection? So for anyone that hasn't seen, Liverpool and Everton are playing their first game of game week 24 on the 1st of February at 3 p.m. So Liverpool against Bournemouth, Everton against Leicester. Their game against each other, which gives them the double, is not until the 12th of February. So there's an 11-day gap. Usually it wouldn't be like that. You'd play on the weekend, then you'd play the midweek straight away afterwards. But because of Carabao Cup and FA Cup matches, that can't be done. So there is a bit of a gap. In terms of impacting selections, I don't think it really makes too much difference because most of the players we're looking to bring in are nailed on. So like Salah, Trent, Van Dijk, Konate, Alisson, Ndiaye, Pickford, Mykolenko, they're all going to play. They could get injured, but you take that risk even if the gap was only 3 or 4 days. Maybe there's a little bit of an extra risk here, but everybody is in the same boat. You could maybe argue that players like Gakpo and Diaz, their minutes aren't 100% secure, so they're a bit more risky because of the long gap. But the only player that's really going to impact there is Jota. He can't stay fit anyway. So again, I don't think it's a massive problem. The transfer window for January actually shuts after the game week 24 deadline. So maybe Everton could go and buy like another forward, another left back, and that could be an issue. But you'd also be in that boat if the second game was midweek, right? Because the first game would be on Saturday. The deadline for January would shut on Monday. And then the game for the double would be like on Tuesday or Wednesday anyway. So even if the gap was shorter, you'd still have that problem. So I don't think it really does impact selections that heavily. Like, is Konate more likely to get injured than Van Dijk? Possibly. Is it worth paying over $1 million more? Probably not. Or at least it's not worth forcing it. If you've got the money to go for Van Dijk, then fair enough. He's probably the better option anyway. But Konate is such good value, it's probably worth the risk. Also for Liverpool in particular, who are probably the more important of the two teams for FPL purposes, after Bournemouth, they've got the Carabao Cup semi-final. So they might play a strong-ish team in that one. The FA Cup, there's going to be massive rotation. They're away to Plymouth, Argyle. They're not going to play their first team in that game. They might get some minutes, but they're not going to go and play the full 90 for the most part. And then it's the second game against Everton. Then you're back to just Premier League matches against Wolves. So I don't really see it as a massive problem. It's going to be annoying, right, if someone gets injured in that first game, but it would be annoying anyway. So I would just pick the players you'd usually pick and not worry too much about the gap. Unless there's something I'm missing, which I might be, but I think it's probably fine. So when would be the best time to play the assistant manager chip? Now, for most people, you're going to want to use it over a double game week. So you can either use it this week in double game week 24, then it'll be active for 25 and 26 as well. Or you can save it until later on when we have doubles in 33 and 36. If you don't use it this week, my advice would be to just forget about the chip for a while. Because to use it later on in the doubles, you need to know what the fixtures are, and we don't have that information yet. And also, a big part of the assistant manager chip is table bonus. And the table is going to change later on in the season. So there's just no point putting too much thought into it. Either decide if you're using it this week, and then if you're not, completely forget about it. Now, you don't have to use it over a double. There might be an opportunity at some point where a team is playing really well, but they happen to have 2 or 3 table bonus games in a row. And maybe at that point, you think about using it. But we need to wait for that opportunity to arise. And if it does, you'll hear about it, right? If you're consuming FPL content, you're not going to miss it. So don't panic about it too much. By the way, there is an opportunity like that right now. Marco Silva for Fulham have Newcastle away. That's a table bonus game. And so is Forest at home in 25. And then in 26, they got Palace at home. If Fulham could beat Newcastle away and Forest at home, that would be huge points. But also, you'd be activating the chip on a single game week manager with an away game, rather than using one of the double game week managers instead in Slot and Moyes. So I just can't really see any need to do it. For game week 24 specifically, you've got a couple of options, and you can use transfers, by the way. And just one thing to note, once you activate the chip and choose a manager, even for your initial selection, if you want to change it, you've got to use a transfer. It's not like Wildcard where you can make unlimited changes. So just keep that in mind. So Slot, Bournemouth away, Everton away. I've mentioned before, I feel like that's potentially 2 games that are banana skins, basically. Bournemouth playing really well at the moment. They've just beaten Newcastle 4-1, Forest 5-0. It's going to be more difficult against Liverpool, but they're capable of getting goals and therefore making it more difficult for Liverpool to win. And then Everton is the final Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. I think Slot is absolutely fine to use if you really want to use it in 24. But for me, as someone that's already tripled up on Liverpool, there's no point forcing it. And I feel like I'll get as good an opportunity later on in the season, if not better. So I'm not going to use it on this one. If you do, though, you've then got Liverpool against Wolves at home. I'd probably just keep it on Slot for that, because that's probably a win. And then Man City away in 26, you can either keep it on Slot or look to move to someone else. So I've put Areola down for Wolves at home. There's another opportunity to maybe go for Arteta. Let me just check I'm on the correct week. Arteta against West Ham at home. So you could move to a manager like that. There's not too many table bonus games, though, that are decent. Like even Ipswich versus Spurs right now, because Ipswich are in 19th and Spurs are in 15th, that wouldn't be a table bonus game. So I feel like there's not a huge amount of upside using it in 24 on Slot, but I also don't mind it. But if you've got triple captain, I would definitely use it this week. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. For Moyes, Leicester at home is not a table bonus game, but obviously there's a good chance they win that. Liverpool at home is, and even if they get a draw, by the way, for table bonus, that's 8 points, which is more than Slot would get for a win against Bournemouth. I just don't know if I want to rely on Everton. They don't score a huge amount of goals. I just can't see myself using it on Moyes. He's only 0.5 million though, so he's probably easier to get to for most people. And then you can either keep it on Moyes and have Crystal Palace away and Man United at home, or you could switch to Silva, like I mentioned, who's got Forest at home, which is a table bonus game, and then Palace at home for 26, where you could either choose to move to someone else or just leave it on him. I don't mind it too much, but one thing to point out for Everton, as the table stands right now, Palace and Man United are not table bonus games. Palace are only 3 places ahead, and Man United it's 4. So you don't even get that for Moyes. I don't hate the Moyes shout. Leicester at home is winnable. Maybe get a draw against Liverpool, and then possibly switch to Marco Silva if you've got the spare transfers. Because if Fulham win against Forest, that's quite good. Then Palace at home is not a bad fixture. The only thing to mention, and I haven't quite memorised all the prices, is Moyes is 0.5 million. Marco Silva is, where is he? He's 1.1. So you'd have to have spare money in the bank. You'd have to free up 1.1 million to get Moyes and then switch to Silva. So I don't know. It just feels like a chip that's going to be much easier to play after or before a wild card, so that you can wild card out of the extra funds you've spent, or wild card into, you know, having the squad structure how you want it. So I'm not against 24. Please don't get me wrong here. I think slot is pretty decent. That is where I would go rather than Moyes. But I think you are going to get as good an opportunity later on. There's no rush to use it right now. But if you're not using it this week, just forget about it. It's not worth the brain power. We will figure it out later on. So would you use triple captain in game week 24 or save it for a future double game week? Now, I don't have my triple captain chip left, but if I was in a position where I had triple captain, assistant manager and bench boost, I'm almost certain that I'd be activating the triple captain this week. I'd want to use all 3 of those chips over double game weeks, and as far as we know, there's only going to be 3 left this season. Most people don't have a good bench in 24, so you're saving that for 33 or 36, and it's easier to set that up with a wild card. So then you've got triple captain versus assistant manager. And if you're looking at the double in 24, saying it's not that great for Salah, it's 2 away games, there might not be that many goals, that also means it's not a great assistant manager. Now, I get that Liverpool could just win both games 1-0, and that would be pretty decent. But if it's difficult for Salah, it's also difficult for Liverpool in general. And so if there's going to be a better double later, I'd rather save the assistant manager chip for that, because it's the more powerful chip of the 2. Put it this way, right? If you nail just 1 game with table bonus and it's a win, you're getting like 16 points plus. You know, can Salah get that from a double game week? Absolutely. But he's probably not going to get much more than 20. Like 20 would be an amazing score from triple captain. For 1 game with table bonus, you're going to get 16 plus. And then you've still potentially got 2 or 3 games left. The assistant manager chip is more powerful, so I would save that for the better double. It might be later on that you don't want to use it on slot. You want to use it on a different manager. But obviously, if you do activate it in one of the doubles later on, you can also use your triple captain the same week. Some people might be looking at like double game week 33, thinking if Liverpool beat Spurs in the Carabao Cup semi-final, the match against Villa will be postponed. That will probably go into 33. And Villa away, Leicester away is better than Everton away, Bournemouth away. I would agree with that. But again, it's probably going to be better to use bench boost or assistant manager later on. And there's not a guarantee that Liverpool will beat Spurs. I know everyone will say it's like 100% guaranteed. Who knows? Maybe Spurs hang on. Then all of a sudden Liverpool don't have that double later. So for me, the assistant managership is just worth so many more points than triple captain is. If you're going to use it over doubles, I would use the weakest chip, which is the triple captain, in the weakest double, which is probably this week. You could use it in single game weeks, right? You could save triple captain for Southampton at home in game week 28 for Salah, but I'd rather use it over 2 matches. So long story short, if I'm in a position with all of those chips, I'm definitely using triple captain. If you've already got rid of like bench boost, for example, then you could absolutely save it. Maybe there'll be a better opportunity later on. I don't think you're going to get screwed over where there's a really terrible triple captain in 33 or 36. I think you'll be fine. But if you've got all 3 of those chips left, I'm using triple captain this week. So is double Bournemouth worth considering? I'm going to assume this is from an attacking point of view. So 2 of Kluivert, Semenyo, Utara. There is nothing wrong with this whatsoever. If you've got space in your squad for 2 sub 6 million midfielders, each of these players is good individually. Therefore, having 2 of them is not a problem. And the fixtures are really good after Liverpool at home in 24. So just a reminder, Southampton away, Wolves at home, Brighton away, Spurs away, Brentford at home in the blank in 29. Some people might then wildcard in 30. And if you don't, it's then Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Fulham at home, Palace away. So it's not an issue having Bournemouth midfielders for quite a while, and their price is excellent value. The only thing I would say, as a little bit of caution, Bournemouth midfielders are starting to get talked about like they're absolutely essential, and they are incredible value, but you do not need to force them into your team, especially with Liverpool at home. I said this already this week. If you've got someone like Sarr at Crystal Palace and you're just done with him, fair enough. Bring in a Bournemouth player for 24, even if that's a doubler. I've got no issue with it whatsoever. It's going to look really good from 25 onwards. but they are not essential all of a sudden. They've had really good results against Newcastle and Forest. They are a very attacking team. They will continue to score goals, but there are other players that will get points as well. You don't have to panic that you don't have 1 or 2 Bournemouth players for game week 24 in particular. If you want to pick them up for 25, absolutely fine. And like I said, a double up looks pretty good, but I feel like we're getting to the stage now where people feel like you've got to have them. Otherwise, it's a massive mistake, and I just don't agree that they are that good. They're really good, but not that good. Like for my team, for example, this is it in 24. In 25, my midfield is Salah against Wolves at home, Palmer against Brighton away, Mbeumo against West Ham away, Eze against Everton at home, Rodgers versus Ipswich at home. Would I rather have 2 Bournemouth midfielders against Southampton than Rodgers and Eze? Probably, but it's not worth a transfer when those two have got pretty decent fixtures. So for my team, the entry point is probably game week 26 when Rodgers has Chelsea at home and Villa's fixtures get a little bit worse, and then all of a sudden those Bournemouth midfielders look better. So I'm probably going to have to skip the Southampton game, but it just works better for my team. So I'm a little bit worried about the prices going up and the ownership and how much it could hurt me, but they're just not essential. They are brilliant, and a double up is worth considering, but you've probably already got a bunch of good midfielders that you don't have to force out of your team. So this question makes me sad. Would you sell Bruno Fernandes? He's playing deeper, so Mbeumo looks like a better option now. This is one of those questions where I don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer, and I'm not trying to sit on the fence. I've already said in this video I wouldn't take hits for Everton players. Wissa is better than Ndiaye. I would definitely triple captain, etc. This one I'm a little bit less sure about because on the surface of it, you've got a player that's nailed on penalties. Yes, he sometimes plays a little bit deeper, but not every game. And the fixtures are pretty good. Palace at home, Spurs away, Everton away, Ipswich at home, Arsenal at home in 28, then Leicester away in 29. Outside of that Arsenal game, the fixture run for Man United is very good. He's always going to play. And importantly, they definitely play in 29 where some teams are going to blank. So I quite like the idea of holding on to Bruno. And I'm still pretty sure for my team, I'm going to get him at some point before that blank, especially if I wildcard in game week 30. So if you've already got him, using a transfer to get rid of him just doesn't necessarily sit right with me. Is Mbeumo a better option? I'm not completely sure that he is. And I'm saying this as someone that's got Mbeumo in my team. Like if we look at the stats so far this season, if I just go to per 90 minutes custom stats, you can check all this, by the way, yourself. Link in the description below. 7-day free trial, 30% off at the moment. Mbeumo's stats for the season, you're looking at 0.2 non-penalty expected goals per 90, 0.22 expected assists. So 0.42 expected goal involvement. For Fernandes, you're looking at 0.25 non-penalty expected goals, so more goal threat, and 0.2 expected assists. So overall, Fernandes has performed a little bit better over the season. I know Mbeumo scored a lot more goals, but as I've said many times before, and I'm saying this as an owner, Mbeumo has overperformed quite a lot. So I'm not completely convinced that Mbeumo is definitely better than Bruno, unless Bruno plays as a 6 in every one of these games, and I don't think he necessarily will. So I probably wouldn't sell him. The reason that I'm on the fence is some people are going to be sat there where they want to go and get Trent or Gakpo and they want to fund it by selling Bruno to like a Bournemouth midfielder. I don't mind that, right? They've also got really good fixtures coming up. They're in really good form right now. I don't hate that. That's why I don't think there's a right or wrong. But for most people, unless you're freeing up money, I don't think there's that many midfielders that are better than Bruno over the next 6 weeks. Or at least that are not worth using a transfer on right now. If you haven't got a third Liverpool player, you want to get Diaz, fair enough. Do Fernandes to Diaz. But I'm not sure I would do Fernandes to Mbeumo. But let me know in the comments below. I suspect that most people would sell Bruno because, as I said when people were buying him before the Southampton game, he does frustrate people. As soon as he blanks, they want him out of their team. So if it makes your life easier by not having him, then just sell him. But I think he is a pretty good option for the next 6 weeks. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button and rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. Check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below. And I'll be back tomorrow for the team selection video.